Welcome today to the Bonar Institute webinar about what are mission-critical issues for purposeful boards and C-suites. Of course, C-suites refers to the corporate officers with the letter C in their titles. I'm John Barker. I'm Senior VP at the Bonar Institute, and here is my contact information. And I'm delighted that the other person in today's webinar is James Bonar, who is the founder of the Bonar Institute. And James will be asking questions and making comments today throughout the webinar. James has a lot of experience in coaching executives and being a sounding board for members of boards of directors. And recently, James gave an excellent webinar about artificial intelligence in the context of digital transformation in a VUCA world. And we'll be mentioning artificial intelligence today. I want to make a legal disclaimer because we are discussing some legal and regulatory issues in today's presentation. And I am required by my ethical certifications and the fact that I'm a lawyer, I am required by law to make a legal disclaimer. Neither the presenter, me, nor the Bonar Institute is providing legal advice in this presentation. You should retain your own legal counsel for advice about specific facts and issues. So, for example, something that is correct in the context of today's presentation in the law might not be correct in your particular jurisdiction, but the principles will still apply. The key takeaways today that we'll be focused on is the topic of mission critical. Mission critical is more important than ever for boards of directors because case law is changing in the state of Delaware. And the majority of publicly held companies in the United States are incorporated in the state of Delaware. And they are subject to the judicially created doctrine of mission criticality. And we're going to be talking today about defining and identifying mission critical issues for your organization. And we're going to talk about the imperative of digital transformation. I'm actually of the opinion that digital transformation is likely a critical or mission critical issue for every organization today. And we'll also be talking about the board's role in cybersecurity and artificial intelligence oversight. The state of Delaware in its judiciary has already stated that cybersecurity is a mission critical issue that boards and C-suites must focus on. And it is highly likely that AI oversight for the majority of boards and C-suites either is already a mission critical issue or will become a mission critical issue. We'll be talking about how boards and C-suites can use the concept of purposeful leadership from the Bonar Institute to manage mission critical needs. The reason that's important is when boards and C-suites fail to exercise oversight over mission critical issues, and there is a failure, some sort of failure that affects the legal and regulatory or financial posture of the organization, the chance of the board members or C-suite being personally liable for some of those damages is a higher risk. And we'll be giving some actionable steps for boards and C-suites to take. But what we'd like to state overall in this presentation is that when you apply purposeful leadership skills, you will put yourself and your organization and your board and your colleagues and all your stakeholders in a better position to manage those mission critical risks. I'd first like to note the foundation of this entire presentation, and that is the Bonar Institute's definition of purposeful leadership. Purposeful leadership is an ethical choice that principled leaders make to achieve something greater than themselves and the companies they lead. The Bonar Institute has a lot of programs on purposeful leadership to assist board members and C-suite members to acquire purposeful leadership skills. I'd like to note the emphasis on ethics. And something interesting with regard to cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, the concept of ethics is actually becoming embodied in the legal and regulatory principles that establish liability when mission critical risks are not managed in the organization, particularly data security, data privacy, both of which are huge risks in the context of cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. Now, mission criticality occurs in the context of fiduciary duties. If you are a member of the board of directors of a publicly held company, or you are a member of the C-suite, you are a duly appointed corporate officer, you have a duty of good faith, a duty of good care, and a duty of loyalty. The duty of care means that you must make decisions using a reasonable amount of care and diligence. You need to inform yourselves about the risks involved in making a decision. And the duty of loyalty means that you must place the interests of the corporation above your own interests. And the duty of good faith means that you must exercise the duty of care and the duty of loyalty with good faith, with best efforts. And there are different standards for saying what good faith is. In the state of Delaware, there are extensions of the core fiduciary duties called the duty of oversight and the duty to monitor. We'll be talking about these two fiduciary duties because when you have a mission critical risk, your oversight and monitoring duties are heightened. And that is very important. Not all risks in the organization are deserve the same level of scrutiny. And we'll be talking about how to identify those mission critical issues and how to use purposeful leadership to improve oversight and monitoring activities. I would like to note that digital transformation is no longer an option, particularly in the context of generative AI. We are in a new era of digital transformation. Generative AI will affect every organization, and every organization that digitally transforms is experiencing heightened risks of cybersecurity incidents that results in liability for data breaches of personally identifiable information, so customer data. And generative AI in and of itself presents several risks of its own that can become mission critical. And generative AI is becoming a means by which cyber attacks are carried out. And generative AI in and of itself poses cybersecurity risks. In addition, not using generative AI can also heighten your risk of cybersecurity problems. And this is why I refer to digital transformation being in a new era. Digital transformation is now a term that's been used for several years. We are truly experiencing an imperative of digital transformation. You will need to think about how you will incorporate generative AI into your business and managing the attendant cybersecurity risks. Now, I'm going to review some key cases. I'm not reviewing all the cases. I'm just reviewing key cases that I believe are the most important in explaining what mission criticality is. In 2019, the Delaware Supreme Court decided a case called Marchand v. Barnhill. This actually involved a case in which an ice cream factory, several factories of an ice cream company in a privately held company, by the way, not a publicly held company. So this privately held company had a fiduciary board. And there was a listeria outbreak in all of the factories. And the factories had been undergoing inspections by the United States Food and Drug Administration for several years. And those inspections had turned up many issues that were making it more likely that a listeria outbreak would occur. And in the case, the court found that the board of directors of the ice cream manufacturer failed to implement any system to monitor the company's food safety performance. And the court noted that food safety performance is core to the business. In order to sell ice cream, you have to have food safety. And it is an existential issue for the business. And the court said food safety is a mission critical issue for the company. This raises several interesting points. It sort of shows that whether something is mission critical can depend on the business in which you are in. What industry line are you in? And if your business is in multiple industry lines, your risk posture is slightly different than if your business is dependent on a single business line. And the court actually had language in which it defined what is mission critical. The court said, mission critical is a compliance issue that is intrinsically critical to the company's business operation. And I would note, as my personal opinion, I believe artificial intelligence and cybersecurity well, cybersecurity is already intrinsically critical to a company's business operation. But I would also argue myself that in many companies, generative AI already is intrinsically critical. And the court noted that mission critical issues are so important to the company's success that the board must make a good faith effort to put in place a reasonable board level system of monitoring and reporting. And when board members develop purposeful leadership skills, they will be better able to fulfill those activities. There was a very interesting 2019 case decided by the Delaware Chancery Court called In Re Clovis Oncology. In this particular case, the reason for the business was to develop an oncology lung cancer drug. And in this specific case, there was an issue about the accuracy of the clinical data that had been submitted to the Food and Drug Administration. The company's entire success hinged on the drug's effectiveness and the reliability of the clinical trial results. And any failure to oversee the accuracy of this data could jeopardize the company's entire organization. So the court emphasized that it also gave us a little bit of a definition of mission critical risk. So it said the accuracy of the clinical data is a mission critical risk. It said it was the most central and mission critical aspect of the company's business. And again, it mentioned that language that are intrinsically critical to the business operation. And in simpler terms, this simply means the board must pay close attention to compliance issues that are absolutely essential to the company's core business and survival. So think about for a minute about your business. What are the risks and issues that are intrinsically critical to your business and which are essential to its core operations and survival? There's another aspect to mission criticality that the courts in Delaware have not specifically addressed, but which the United States government has addressed, and the European Union and several other countries have addressed. Many nations are now imposing higher cybersecurity and AI risk mitigation in specific industry sectors that are deemed critical infrastructure. For example, in the European Union, there's European Union legislation called NIS2 And in the United States, we have executive orders from the presidential administration, and then we have federal administrative agencies that have issued policies, and indeed their regulations in these sectors. So if you work in the production of energy, or you are in the supply chain of energy, if you're a water or electrical or natural gas utility, if you work in the chemical sector, logistics, national defense, law enforcement, global positioning system, and satellite communications, if your business is one of the critical infrastructure businesses and you are facing threats from being a supplier to a critical infrastructure business, and you're getting threats from climate change, including extreme heat and cold, flooding, drought, and wildfires, or other climate threats, then you're part of that critical infrastructure. If climate change prevents you from fulfilling your duties to critical infrastructure companies, you have a mission critical risk. Your supply chain resilience. Think about cargo ships that deliver equipment for military and critical infrastructure, if you're in healthcare or financial services. So your industry sector and your position in the value chain of the industry sector are things the board and C-suite need to very carefully analyze. Now, there's another very famous case, the SolarWinds case. It's a very famous case. And this is the case, it's not the only Delaware case, but in this case, the Delaware Chancery Court specifically stated that cybersecurity is mission critical. Actually, there are several other cases in which cybersecurity has been classified as mission critical. But the court found that cybersecurity and data security, and notice they're making a distinction between the two, are mission critical risks for online service providers. Well, all of us are essentially online service providers. If you store customer data, even for billing purposes, or customer contact, you're an online service provider. And this implies that data security and data governance are mission critical risks in general. And obviously, the risk will be higher in certain industries. For example, healthcare and financial services. Financial services is quite broad. It includes insurance, consumer reporting and credit reporting agencies, banks, credit card companies, credit unions, investment advisors. They're going to collect more data that is more personal. And that means that data security and data governance risks and cybersecurity risks have heightened scrutiny when it comes before the court, or when there's an enforcement action by the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. I'd like to go on just to give you an idea of how cybersecurity is potentially existential. I won't read through all of these fines. Actually, there was just another huge fine against Meta and Facebook. I just found out about it today, actually. But you see fines that are going into the billions of dollars, or approaching the billions of dollars. And some of these fines are by organizations in the European Union or the UK. Some of the fines are issued by courts. Some of the fines are issued by United States federal administrative agencies. Some of them are issued by state governments. So if you have a cybersecurity breach, you could have fines assessed against you literally all over the world, anywhere you do business. So cybersecurity is literally potentially an existential threat to the business, and the board inherently must pay attention to that. Something that's very, very interesting, there was a fairly recent case involving McDonald's Corporation, and it reaffirmed the fact that management has the same fiduciary duties as members of the board of directors. And this case is important to note because what I've discovered is, and the court discovered, is that a lot of members of the C-suite forgot or were never taught that they are subject to fiduciary duties, and that in this case involved the breach of fiduciary duties by the chief human resources officer. The case did not discuss mission critical risks, but the reason I'm noting it is now that the C-suite has been reaffirmed to have the fiduciary duty obligations as boards, this means that the C-suite has a duty to be proactive in bringing red flags and risks to the board's attention according to the risk tolerance and risk appetite that the board of directors has set for the organization. So, James, it looks like you have a question or comment.
Actually, I have a comment. What you're saying is so very important
Yes.
in terms of the mission criticality
Yes.
of AI and cybersecurity for boards in the C-suite.
Yes.
That underscores, though, that a great number of members of boards and the C-suites are unaware of the risks and the criticality of those
Yeah.
risks for their organization.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to say this for the benefit really of the audience, because John, I'm going to cite an example of you really.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, you delivered 2 master classes on AI, on generative AI and corporate governance and the risks
Yes.
thereof.
Yes.
And what really struck me about these 2 master classes was that it was given to an audience of past, present, and future board members, including chairmen of boards
Yes.
and of C-suite members. And
Yes.
what you did then is that you recounted a story
Yes.
of a company, a high growth company that was expanding
Yes. Yes.
internationally, and there
Yes,
was a
indeed.
major focus on AI.
Yes.
Now, what you did as you were recounting this story, and it was a fictional company based on one of
Yes.
our clients who
Yes.
accepted with our request that we use them as the base for the story.
Yes.
So what you did is that you recounted that and you asked the audience, and the audience was of 90 members approximately,
Mm-hmm.
to identify risks as they saw them.
Mm-hmm.
During the 2 webinars, in the first webinar, 5 risks were identified. In the second webinar, there was slightly more, 7 risks were identified.
Yes.
In the course of the discussion on those risks, you then shared that 50 risks had been embedded into your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And many of those were mission critical risks,
Mm-hmm.
some
Mm-hmm.
of which were existential for the company. And that means that in the case, the first case where there were 6 identified out of 50,
Mm-hmm.
that means that 44 risks, or 88%, were not identified by
Mm-hmm.
these board members, past, present, and future, and C-suite members. They were unaware of it.
Yes.
So when we're speaking about the
Yes.
importance in terms of the fiduciary duties of boards and indeed of the C-suite, it comes down in many cases that they're not even aware of the magnitude of the risks that they're confronting. So I just wanted to mention that in passing.
It's very, very interesting. And in follow-up, it shows in a later slide that I'll discuss recommendations for board members and C-suite members. It shows the importance of, mission critical risks that someone on the board or a board committee needs to have a sufficient level of knowledge of those mission critical risks.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity and AI, and the greater the degree to which your business depends on AI or your supply chain is dependent on AI, the more likely it is that AI is a mission critical risk. And that makes it imperative that you might even want a board committee devoted to AI, or you want at least one person on your board at any one time to have specialized knowledge of AI in your particular industry, as well as some minimum level of board-wide knowledge of AI or cybersecurity. So, and boards, publicly held company boards, do have the right, according their depends on the stock exchange they're in, their corporate charter, their bylaws, but they have the, in general, they have the power to delegate specific tasks to a committee. And by the way, another way that boards can get knowledge of mission critical risks, let's say the board does not have time to gain the knowledge, it might set up an advisory board of specialists. Those advisory board members would not be under fiduciary duties, but they could advise the board on the specialized knowledge that they need and make recommendations that the board or a board committee could follow. So the advisory board model could be very interesting in that context as well.
Could I just add one point? And
Yeah.
then the one point is what underlines what you're saying is that the board members have to have a mindset that is open to this type of risk. And currently, what we're seeing is that this is an area of potential improvement and needed improvement.
And that is one of the attributes of a purposeful leader, at
Yes.
which, of course, I'm developing the curriculum for the Bonar Institute's digital program on responsible AI for board members in the C-suite. And in some instances, this presentation is giving some of the content I'll be discussing. Now, of course, our program is not going to focus on mission critical as a topic. It's going to mention it, of course, but it's not the only thing. But it is a subset of the theme. And so that's one of the things that our course will highlight is how the attributes, the developing the empathy, developing the purpose, having an ethical consciousness. Remember that ethics are making their way into the law. And data privacy is now an ethical issue that is embodied in the European Union Artificial Intelligence Act. So I'll go on to the next slide. And in fact, that is the topic. Responsible AI and trustworthy AI principles. Is AI mission critical? Well, we just discussed the issue that you need to figure out if AI is mission critical. Do you develop your product using AI? Do you improve your product using AI? If your AI were to fail, would your business fail? That would help you understand if it's mission critical. And then you would need to look at your supply chain. Is any member of your supply chain that you are dependent on also dependent on AI in a mission critical way? So this brings up the topic of the Organization for Economic Coordination and Development values-based AI principles. Now, I would like to note there's several organizations that have developed principles of trustworthy AI and responsible AI. They all focus on the same topics. So no matter which organization you choose, and all the major organizations such as International Standards Organization, the European Union, the United States government in its executive order on AI, or the United States government Department of Commerce's National Institute of Standards and Technology, which developed the AI risk management framework and the cybersecurity risk management framework. They all cite or have studied the OECD values-based AI principles. And I just like to read through these. And I would like to note that somewhere in the world, there are laws and regulations regarding AI that mention some of these. Inclusive growth, so that's including all of your citizenry, sustainable development and well-being, human rights and democratic values, including fairness and privacy, human rights. Oh, I repeated that. My apologies. Robustness, security, and safety, accountability. And I realized I left out transparency, but actually transparency is one of the key OECD values-based AI principles. And what I'd like to note that the European Union AI Act specifically cites and incorporates several standards of the OECD AI principles, as well as other language of responsible AI and trustworthy AI, making them a legal obligation if you do business in Europe and you're subject to the EU AI Act. In fact, as of 2023, so these numbers would increase, but OECD has not updated this information. But 70 plus jurisdictions globally have adopted more than 1,000 policy initiatives based on OECD AI principles, including the United States. That President Biden's executive order on artificial intelligence does so. There are several principles also that are directly related to the cybersecurity CIA triad. CIA stands for the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. Also, data and privacy protection, robustness, security, and safety, and trustworthy AI. So what are actionable steps for boards and C-suites? And there are many sources of this where you can find this information. So this is nothing new. It appears in the Delaware case law. It appears in law review articles, newspaper articles, trade journals, governmental publications. Boards should proactively monitor legal and regulatory risks, proactively identify mission critical risks facing the company, so that this gets back to those purposeful leadership attributes of purposeful leaders. So that proactiveness being tied to the mission. Prioritize proactive management of mission critical risks, proactively address yellow flags and red flags, and you must record the actions in board minutes. You must show evidence that you have proactively discussed that. And the C-suite has obligations, that's management. They must proactively monitor legal and regulatory risks. They must proactively identify mission critical risks facing the company and inform the board, particularly red flags. But remember, yellow flags might become red flags very quickly. They must also understand what is the board's risk appetite and risk tolerance. And the reason that is so important is the board cannot consider every single risk in the organization. That's why management manages the day-to-day operations of the organization. The board is more strategic. So management needs to understand when they must proactively inform the board that there's an issue that needs to be addressed, when the board might not want to be contacted outside of the regular board meeting or board reporting cadence. And they must also monitor peers and competitors. Sometimes the way you become aware of a mission critical risk is you observe your competitors or members of your supply chain experiencing a mission critical risk, and that's a signal to you that something might be occurring. So that's the end of our presentation today, and we know that we're going to have more people view the recording than were able to participate in today's webinar. But James, do you have any questions or comments today?
The only comment I'd like to add, John, one is I really enjoyed the presentation. I think it's excellent,
Mhm.
as is what I've come to know of all of your presentations. Um, what is striking is we're living in a new era of the mission criticality of
Yes,
risks.
yes, yes.
And what's also interesting for me, and what's important for the Institute and what we do, is
Mhm.
the NACD has identified purposeful leadership as an important attribute. Well, it's more than an
Yes,
asset. It's almost a necessity that leaders have to adapt and adopt to be
yes,
effective. And then
yes.
also the NAIC, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners in the
Mm,
US, then also speak about the importance of leaders being ethical. So
yes,
here, this reinforces, I think, what you were
yes,
speaking about the fact that really leaders today, their North Star would
yes,
be to adopt, embrace purposeful and ethical leadership.
yes, yes, indeed. Yes,
So
indeed.
that's really what I think you have been exhibiting. You have demonstrated very effectively, from my point of view, today.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, James, can you elaborate a little bit about, I put in the definition of purposeful leadership, but could you talk about the attributes of purposeful leaders?
So there are many attributes to purposeful leaders, but I'll just really identify three main ones. And the
Yes,
three chief attributes of a purposeful leader is
yes,
to be adaptable,
yes,
flexible, and anticipant.
yes,
And
yes,
part of that is that we are dealing in many cases with the unknown. Well,
yes,
unexplained, the unknown. We don't know what risks, what crisis will come up.
yes,
However, what we do know is that they will be crises that will come up in the short,
yes,
medium, and longer term.
yes,
And we have to have leaders who, even though they know not what those crises will be, they can anticipate that they will come and that they will have the flexibility and adaptability to be able to
yes,
manage through that.
yes,
If that is not the case, their companies, their organizations will sputter and ultimately fail. And often that failure will be in the short to medium term.
yes, yes, yes,
It
indeed.
is no longer good enough to try and survive, because if you try and survive, you will fail.
Hmm.
You have to really work hard to thrive.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
So that's a very, very succinct answer
Yeah,
to your question.
yes, absolutely. Well, I would like to note that we will be releasing a digital program divided into modules about responsible AI in the context of purposeful leadership. I'm looking forward to having a webinar to introduce that program when it's ready for release. And I invite members of the audience to contact us at any time. I'm going to just place one more time on the screen my contact information. Well, I'd like to put the Bonar Institute's contact information on the screen very quickly. And so right here, our website is here, and you will notice that you can explore the theme of purposeful leadership, and you can also access our webinars, and we also have a leadership blog. And I think you will find the webinars fascinating because we have webinars that address AI and human capital management, how the C-suite can improve board communication, what directors and officers need to know about cybersecurity mandates for AI systems, several other very, very interesting presentations that are available. So I'd like to thank everyone for watching the recording when you do, And James, thank you very much for participating today. And I'll sign off now.